So my name is Gary Simon. I'm the co-founder and chairman of CleanStart. My background is in entrepreneurial businesses. I have done 5 of them. I think I got all to one of them, but one of them to an exit. And so I've been doing work in energy, clean energy for about 50 years. So I was head of a corporate venture capital fund that invested in companies, as well as then doing some on my own. So I've been a utility executive, management consulting, worked for the state government, worked in the Carter administration. So over 50 years, did a variety of. So the purpose of the session tonight is just to give you an opportunity to ask questions. We're going to start with just a little bit on, who is on the call. So Kimberly, you kindly described what you were doing. Alain, can you, for Kimberly's benefit, just say briefly again what your interests are? And maybe put your camera on and you're on mute.
Yes, definitely. So me, it's like I just want to have a perspective from a CEO and learn from you. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right. So next slide. Our assistant for the evening is our program director for outreach, Christina Granados. She'll be with the class throughout. So we're looking for people who have already formed a business and you've got some amount of revenue. This is probably a program which, if you do just have an idea or you're exploring the perspective of CEO, could be useful. It'll be more useful if you're really relating to a company you have in mind. The path that we take in this is the one laid down by Steve Blank and Alex Osterwalder, and it's called the business canvas model. So we'll grind through all 9 segments of a business model and get people to define what they're doing. What would you like to learn from the class, Kimberly?
Well, as we're pre-revenue right now, some of the things that I would like to learn is a little bit more customer discovery, a little bit more specifics on B2B type of activities, because we're not at all consumer products. I mean, you don't sell battery management system software to people, but without it, you can't have an electric vehicle. So those are the kind of things. I mean, I have an MBA, so I just want to build a little bit more and drill deeper into certain concepts.
Well, we'll definitely do that. And if people in the class are not familiar with building financial models, they're not familiar with business valuation, we're going to go through the whole thing from soup to nuts, including exits and what to expect. Yes, Elaine.
Yes, I have a question. Can you tell us how you build a company and like a bit of the story of CleanTech?
How I personally did it, or do you mean in general how one goes about it?
No, how you did it. Because you mentioned that you were an entrepreneur, you were a startup entrepreneur previously. And so how did it come? How did you decide to open CleanTech?
Okay, so CleanStart is a nonprofit accelerator. So I'm no longer running commercial businesses.
Okay.
And my entry into this was more from the investment side. I was the head of corporate venture capital for the largest utility in New England, as well as their senior vice president for corporate development. And so a number of the companies that we invested in, after I left the utility, I took up and became the CEO of those companies. It's not unusual that CEOs get replaced early on. So a number of the companies that I've dealt with, I picked up midstream. But I had an association with them from either investing personally or as the head of the venture capital fund, and then took them on to success. And frankly, I wish I would have known all the stuff that's going to be in this class when I started, because it would have saved a lot of anguish. And the biggest point of anguish is a bit of what Kimberly was talking about, is spending more time in customer discovery and how you do that. There's a famous thing in this business canvas model. It's called product market fit. And probably would have spent less money and wasted less time if I had the intelligence at that point to spend more time on getting good product market fit. So that's one of the key things that we'll be going over in the class. All right, so let's move on. Next slide. There's only a few slides. So why take the course? The simple motivation we have in giving it is to reduce the amount of time between first dollar in and first dollar of profit out. This is critical because most companies die before they may get to first dollar of profit out. And that's because they weren't well focused on the jobs that needed to be done to get them across that so-called valley of death. So the whole idea is basing your decisions on building the business on evidence, not on assumption, not from an idea you dreamed up overnight, but getting a solid understanding of your business and being able to defend the forecast you're making and the way you're going to enter into the market. So there are many courses out there which teach you to do a pitch to investors, but many of them just focus on giving you 7 good slides that you're very enthusiastic about, and it's a good pitch for 5 minutes. If you don't understand the business in some depth, the idea is to understand the business that you're trying to develop more in depth and be able to answer more of investors' questions. And so the people that will be the ones doing the lectures are people like me that have been in it for a substantial amount of time. And we'll bring in a number of guest speakers to talk about specific topics, marketing, finance, legal. So you'll get the opportunity to quiz them as well. So it gets, as you found out with CTO, it can be pretty intense, but we're trying to get you the best information available, the best tools, and ultimately connect people with investors and other sources of funding that would be interested in going forward and funding your idea. Kimberly, is that pretty much what you're looking for? Is that bullseye, or are you looking for something different?
Well, for one thing, we're actually not looking for any investment at the moment except for grants. That's
That's another form of funding.
So that's the one thing. We are so far from being interesting to the VCs. We are in the lucky situation. My husband's actually a professor at the UC Mercer, so he's got a day job, let's say, and the technology is actually spin off from technology that he worked on before he joined. When we were living in Germany, and it's actually been validated. It's at a TRL 4 level, and what we need to do is validate it in a real car or a real power grid. So it's or both, preferably. And so I guess until then, we're not at all interesting to VCs. So in absence of that, like what else is there to, let's say, to learn about doing the business?
Well, I mean,
I would say that, like, trying to figure out how to price a pilot project, for example, this is something that I really need to have a good grip on. I need to know what this technology is, like, what value does this technology have to an OEM or a tier 1 automotive supplier or a utilities integrator. I need to figure this out. And then, of course, what an exit would really look like, because let's face it, that's for our type of technology, that's the type of thing that you would do is basically have one of your customers buy your technology. So I might be a little bit different than others, but maybe not so different than other startups that you've.
No, you actually are pretty much like the ones. We have a number of applications, and I've been reviewing those. That's pretty much where the majority would be. And don't underestimate the value of looking ahead to the time when you might be talking to an investor, because I think one thing you'll find out is to make yourself look interesting to an acquirer is you still have to do a lot of the same things that you would have to demonstrate to an investor, that the business is viable. So, you're talking about the things that definitely we would cover. The thing in the clean tech world now, Kimberly, is that grant money is a whole lot easier to get than VC money. But there's also a technique to going about getting the grants. And some of it is not necessarily things that you would think of. A lot of it is starting early to have conversations with agencies you think would be willing to fund you, and how you go about that, and what kind of things you should be talking about. Find that one of the recommendations we make is to give a serious look at not starting with VC money, but starting with grant money and contracts. It's non-dilutive capital, and it doesn't have some of the stresses and strains of trying to deal with investors. There are stresses and strains of dealing with funding agencies, but it's a little bit different. So at any rate, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so here's some of the people that will be involved. So Thomas is the executive director at CleanStart. He's also a well-known analyst at a company called CleanEdge, which basically analyzes the performance of hundreds and hundreds of clean tech companies around the world. But he has a very detailed understanding of what they're all doing, where they are in commercializing. And so he's got a lot of insights in terms of what other people have done before. And that includes battery companies, equipment, etc. Dan Wadhwani, who's sort of the godfather of this program, and a good friend. He's a professor now at University of Southern California, the Marshall School of Business. Again, an award-winning professor at School of Business and studying entrepreneurship. And so he's the one that was basically the one that put together this class. I think it was 2019 when we started these classes. So we've been trying to do them once a year. Jose and Sam, we do this in collaboration with Fresno State Water, Energy, and Technology Center, and they'll be providing speakers and helping as well in terms of parts of the class, grant writing, marketing, finance. They also run something called Valley Venture Fund. So they'll be speaking from the perspective of investors as well as to what typically is being looked for. And they also have a grant program. So they speak from the perspective of what you're looking for in grants. Next slide.
I have a question, Gary. How is that different? How is this different than the Valley Ventures? Because we also did Valley Ventures. I also know Jose and Samuel and Thomas.
Well, this is the class we've been doing for many years now. What we tried to do with what Jose has done in the past, the Valley Ventures program tended to be a lot of guest speakers. And so what we're trying to do here is tie it all back to this business model canvas and the disciplined way you go through the things that you need to do for building a business. So Sam and Jose, Thomas and I sort of sat down after giving these classes separately. They did ones out of Fresno State. We did ours here out in the Sacramento region, and say, you know, how could we do this better? And so what we have now is a team approach, and we will have some of the students in this course, which mostly is done virtually from the Fresno area, and then some up here in Sacramento. There'll be 2 days when we're trying to get people to get together in person, a practice session on doing your final demo pitch, and then the actual pitch day itself. But we're working through if we couldn't connect the two centers and have a screen in both places and sort of go back and forth, tossing the ball back and forth to who's making the next presentation, one from Sacramento, then one from Fresno, et cetera. So I would say it's a considerable upgrade, according to what Jose and Sam were saying, over what's been done with the Valley Ventures in the past. The crash course, it is 16 classes. It's about 40 hours of classwork and homework outside of that. As I said, mostly online, 2 in-person sessions. You'll be having a mentor working with you. And the whole idea is to come up with a much better understanding, detailed business model, and from that, how you explain it to a grant writing agency as to what they're looking for, how you explain it to an investment group, how you go into other pitch contests and do well in those. The modules, pretty much it's going through what's in the business model canvas. And so we'll be going through all the topics we have in here. Some of the key things that you learn about are what's a minimum value product, viable product, what's a value proposition, what's product market fit. And then all of that goes back to customer discovery and how you figure that out, what people are looking for. The very questions you were asking, Kimberly, how do you figure out what somebody wants and what they're willing to pay? And there's an art to that. And generally, when people get done with the class, that was one of the biggest things that stood out to them, is how much you can discover from your potential customers and adapt what you're doing so that you're hitting a bullseye for your customers. Okay, so the whole point is, if you have an idea, you want to go out and validate it. And what's the process for doing that? And bringing evidence in so that you're pretty certain that you know customers will buy it, what they'll pay for it, who would be interested in funding it, where your competitors are, and where people are that could, acquire the technology on license or acquire the entire business. So it's a pretty thorough review of everything about creating a business compressed into 40 hours of class time and some homework. That's basically what the course is about. What we need you to do, if you haven't already done it, if you're interested, fill out the application. It's on our website if you haven't seen it other ways. The class is filling up, and we'll review the applications, let you know. I think the application's deadline is right before Christmas. I think it's December 24th. So after the holidays, then you'll find out who got selected to go through the course. There is a $300 deposit. It's a refundable deposit. If you complete the course, it's refundable. But we want to encourage people to make a serious commitment here. And what we found in prior classes is nothing makes you more serious than figuring out you'll get your money back at the end if you do stick with it. We are not a fund, so we're not the ones that would potentially give you financing. We'll show you where that is. And this isn't to win a prize. The prize for you in taking this class is we want everyone who completes the class to ultimately be successful in building a business, getting it funded either through grants, equity, or bootstrapping it, and go on and get your product into the market where it can have an impact on making things greener, cleaner, less impactful on the climate, and in that way do affect what's going on in making a contribution to offsetting climate change. So hopefully everybody who gets through the course will be a winner. I can tell you from the other cohorts that have come through, a number of them have indeed raised millions of dollars. They're out there. One I'm thinking of got contracts with some of the biggest auto manufacturers in the world. It was a piece of software that they came up with, but it's very popular now with the automobile manufacturers. So it does happen. It does help. And we hope you would find it a very rewarding experience. So please consider it and take the opportunity to fill out the application, and we'll hopefully see you in January. Anything else that I can answer for you?
Yes, I have a question. So, is there any requirement that we have to do in order to be in this course or have the certificate?
Just filling out the application so that we can take a look at it, and if there are any issues, we'll get back to you, and and maybe have you explain a bit more of what you want to do. But filling out the application is the only requirement.
Okay, and where do we fill the application at?
It's on our website, cleanstart.org. And Christina, maybe you could make sure that Helen has direct link for that.
Yeah, I can go ahead and email it to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I have a question, Gary.
Sure.
If we decide that the January, February time is too tight for us, because it is actually a busy time looking at my calendar right now, we're able to then defer for a later date, because I did notice that this is something that you've offered actually more often, not just like once a year.
Yes, now that we're through COVID, we're back on a schedule of having a number of cohorts go through. So we'll have to see what the appetite is and if we have enough people to do another class, but we could easily do another one in the fall of 24, or it may be do one this year and do one in 2025. It just depends on a lot of the coursework depends on students in the class making presentations on their own company, what they found in their own research, and getting feedback from their peers. So we have to have enough people in order to make that work. So that's the usual thing that paces when we do these courses. We have to have enough people.
How many cohorts did you have in 2023?
This is our first cohort, because a lot of people still are shy about getting together. And so we've tried to adapt everything to be more online. We started off doing them all in person. And then I think that was the 2019 cohort. And then the 2020 obviously got hit in the middle of COVID. And then there was a general reluctance, and people had other things to do in 21, trying to recover from what happened to them in 2020. So 21 and 22, we had to pause, and now we're back on the horse again. All right. Well, if there are any more questions, and we're available. And then, also, if it is a tough timeline for you, Kimberly, we're also available to do coaching and virtual office hours. We got somebody coming in here. And so you can sign up on our Calendly link, and Christina, make that available to everybody on the call. And, we can just do it one-on-one. Now, it's not as intensive, and we won't be able to spend as much time with you as if you took the course. But if you like some suggestions, if you'd like to sort of bat ideas around and do some brainstorming, we're available to do that.
That sounds great.
So we were joined here late, Mehdi Sada. So Mehdi, welcome. We're kind of at the end of the presentation, and we've got the slides here, and this is on record, so you can watch it again. But what is your idea? What's your innovation that you want to potentially build a startup around?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I'm a water resources engineer and have been doing simulation and modeling in the water and ag industry for the last 12 years. I came from consulting background, and I realized that consultants themselves have a lot of issues to sharpen their skills when they graduate after college. And there needs to be a platform to teach them the required skills in that industry. So I'm not gonna start another consulting company like those that are already in the market. I'm gonna be a Udemy or Coursera for consultants.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good plan. So, you've clearly defined who you're going after there and have some initial thoughts of what's the idea. So the course that we have is built around books and articles that are written by Steve Blank and Alex. If you Google Steve Blank, you'll see a lot of that, but it's something maybe called the Business Model Canvas. And so it's a program that takes you through a step-by-step process of understanding your business and how to avoid a lot of common mistakes. Biggest requirement, maybe, is that you do fill out an application. So Christina will make sure you have that direct link. And if you have other questions, we can get back on the phone individually and answer what's going on there. But
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That would be fantastic. Thank you in advance for doing that. So if there will be questions regarding that, is there a line or is there a number that we can contact or talk to you guys regarding the application process or whatever involved?
sure. So you'll get the recording, and we've gone over many of those questions. The application is very short and hopefully easy to fill out, but you can set up an appointment with Thomas and or myself to answer your questions one-on-one. And that's through something called a Calendly link. So it just gives you our calendars as to when we have open slots, and you just choose one.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and hope to see you in the classes when they begin in January. But if you have any questions in the meantime, you know how to find us, and you can always go to cleanstart.org and see everything that we produce. So we have other events, we do newsletters. If you want to sign up and be on top of things that we do, please do that by going to our website and hitting the thing to subscribe to our newsletter and notifications about our meetup, our other webinars, and our informal networking events. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and look forward to seeing you in January.